Okay, so picture this. Have you ever sat down at your desk, opened up your books, perfectly determined to study and finally improve yourself, only to suddenly find that cleaning your room, staring out the window, or literally doing anything else feels incredibly urgent, right? We have all been there. It's a hugely relatable frustration. You want to focus, but your mind and body just seem to be completely rebelling against you. You might even end the day totally beating yourself up, wondering, why on earth can't I just concentrate? Well, in today's explainer, we are going to explore a really fascinating perspective that suggests this isn't just some simple lack of focus. So let's dive into this question. Why is it that the harder we try to focus on our studies, the more our urge to goof off just absolutely skyrockets? Usually, we just label this as a failure of willpower, or maybe a bad habit that we need to aggressively discipline out of ourselves. But what if we're looking at it all wrong? What if this urge isn't a sign of weakness at all? In fact, it might actually be a sign of something profoundly transformative happening deep inside of you. Which brings us to part one, why we crave distractions and the surge of inner energy. To really understand this, we need to completely reframe how we think about distraction. We need to shift away from seeing it as this annoying problem and start recognizing it as a very real symptom of your personal growth. The core concept driving this is something called your soul's mass. Now, think of your spirit as having an actual tangible weight or density to it. When you've been stagnant for a long time, that energy gets dull. But the moment you start absorbing the right teachings and really engaging in proper study, your soul's mass starts to expand. Your inner energy literally comes back to life. And because this mass is growing, it physically wants to move. It wants to take action. So what you're experiencing as a sudden surge of restlessness, that distraction, is actually your spirit getting excited and saying, hey, let's go do something with all this new energy. But wait, there is a catch. While this expanding energy is an absolutely fantastic sign of growth, it comes with a major risk. If you act on this vibrant new energy without knowing exactly how to channel it, you are setting yourself up for some dangerous missteps. If you just move blindly, purely because you feel energized, well, you might step right into the mud. Or worse, it's literally like putting on a blindfold and sprinting straight off a cliff. So having the urge to act is good, but moving without direction or wisdom, that is a trap. To prevent falling off that cliff, we need a structured approach. And that is part two, the 3- and 7-year roadmap for building your foundation. You see, you cannot just rush out into the world. Grounding your expanding energy isn't some quick weekend project. It takes a really dedicated, phased effort. In your first year of true study, things just start to feel fundamentally different than before. Then by year 2, how you act and apply your knowledge naturally begins to shift. By year 3, you hit this critical testing phase. This is where you really have to solidify what you've learned and prove that your growth isn't just some temporary bubble. And if your mass keeps growing, you commit to a 7-year cycle for true advanced mastery. It's a huge exercise in profound patience and consistency. But here's the thing. Even if you put in the time, studying the wrong way just won't help you. Which brings us to a massive flaw in how we think about learning. Let's look at part 3, intellectual versus societal education, and why we have to go beyond the books. Think about the stark difference between these two approaches. On one hand, we have intellectual education. This is the passive absorption of facts, figures, and information that gets handed down to us, usually while we're just sitting alone at a desk. Now, it's necessary, sure, but it is completely inadequate on its own. On the other hand, we have societal education. This is the real active field study. It's the spiritual work of actually interacting with people, understanding human nature, adapting to new environments, and learning how to truly work together. Intellectual education hands you the tools, but societal education teaches you how to actually exist and thrive in the real world. So, what actually happens when a culture entirely skips that societal education piece? Well, you get a room full of people clutching their textbooks, furiously pointing fingers at each other, and completely unable to communicate. Because we mostly only receive intellectual training, we're left with a society full of incredibly smart but painfully arrogant individuals. Everyone relies strictly on their book smarts, which results in a room full of people who all genuinely think they are the undisputed smartest person there. In the natural result, constant friction, fighting, and arguing. Without societal education, we completely lose the ability to produce true, empathetic future leaders who can actually guide humanity forward. To master this and avoid that trap, you need to completely change your approach. That takes us to part 4, the posture of a student, and using humility as a shield. Handling your growing soul's mass without completely crashing your life requires a very specific, grounded mindset. Listen to this strict, unflinching warning from the source material. If you raise your head, your study is over. Wow, think about that. The very moment you become arrogant, the second you look down on someone else and think you're above them because of what you know, your spiritual and societal growth hits a brick wall. It just completely stops. Arrogance is literally the ultimate roadblock to learning.
So how do we actually maintain the right posture? It boils down to 3 exact steps. Step 1, always stay humble and consciously position yourself below others so you can remain open to learning from them. Step 2, do not chase money or let greed drive your actions. And step 3, cultivate a deep, genuine gratitude for your current environments in the exact people right in front of you. By meticulously following these steps, you are creating the optimal, safe environment for your inner energy to grow. And when you do this, the right path just naturally opens up for you, no forcing required.
But what if we completely ignore that warning? What if we let ego take the wheel? Let's get into part 5, the danger of selfish spirits, when ego takes over. When we start thinking we're highly advanced, spiritually or intellectually superior to everyone else, a highly specific danger arises. If you arrogantly declare your own greatness, you become a literal magnet for what are called selfish spirits or asashin. These are greedy, deceptive energies. And here's the thing, they aren't attracted to humility. They feed entirely on ego and greed. If you start boasting about your expanding mass and trying to artificially elevate yourself, these forces will latch onto you, drag you down to their level, and ultimately turn you into a fool who is completely out of touch with reality. This concept actually marks a massive evolutionary shift. Back in the past era, unseen mystical forces and spirits often took the lead. Humans, driven by either greed or fear, were simply dragged along like a dog on a leash. But the present era, it is entirely different. We have outgrown that dynamic. Today, enlightened studying humans must firmly take the lead. Unseen energies or spirits are merely meant to support from behind. So if you are letting yourself be led around by a mystical force or just your own bloated ego, your life is going to remain entirely blocked. You have to be the one to take the wheel. Which perfectly sets up the beautiful ultimate goal of everything we've talked about today. Part 6, Hongik Ingan, the true leader. Managing your distractions, gathering your soul's mass, rejecting arrogance, and staying perfectly humble. It all leads to one specific transformation. The goal is to become a Hongik Ingan. This translates roughly to a true, highly evolved leader. A Hongik Ingan is someone who has successfully taken all that vibrant, restless inner energy we talked about and transformed it into a refined tool used solely for the greater good. Because they operate out of pure service rather than ego, they naturally and effortlessly command respect. They don't demand leadership, they just embody it. So what does the path to becoming this kind of leader actually look like? Well, it requires dedicating all of that gathered intellectual and spiritual energy to the people around you. You must never boast about being superior. Instead, your only goal should be striving to become an absolutely necessary, genuinely helpful asset to society. Because here's the magic of it. When you focus entirely on being helpful to the world, instead of satisfying your own ego, society will organically recognize your mass. They will be the ones to lift you up to a position of true leadership. You don't have to force it. So, I want to leave you with this final, really vital thought to ponder. The next time you sit down to study and you feel that sudden, overwhelming urge to get distracted and do something else, recognize it for what it truly is. It is your inner energy, your mass, waking up and begging to be used. The question isn't how to suppress it. The real question is, how will you channel that powerful inner energy to actually change the world around you rather than just feeding your own ego? Keep your head down, study society, and let your actions elevate us all. Thank you so much for exploring this explainer with me. Keep learning, and I will see you next time.